we are on. So quickly, I know a lot of you were with us last time, and we appreciate you coming back. But for those of you who are new, this is the agenda for today. We do have a couple of housekeeping items we need to get out of the way. And then I will be talking about digital storytelling for about 25 minutes. Then we'll take a quick intermission. And then the second half is dedicated to Q&A and discussion and networking. Now, if you have to leave at the halfway point, that's perfectly fine as well. But if you can stick around, we would love to have you. We'll go here. So also, if you're new, if you're wondering, I'm not really sure what this Museum Minds Collaborative is, I'll let you know. So basically, Beth and I have been running our own businesses independently, and a lot of people have come to us to seek advice about various museum topics. And so we started to have a discussion, and we said, I wonder if there's a place that we could have these discussions with other people, where people could learn from us, we could all learn from each other, and again, bridge the gap between all sorts of museums and have these important discussions. Beth and I are in process of planning an entire year's worth of content. So sometimes we will be talking, sometimes we will have a guest, and we'll talk about that at the end, who our next guest is. We're really excited about that. But we did want to just say, hey, invite your friends. Again, this is already growing and we're so excited about it. So please invite your museum friends, and we'll keep meeting each month. Oh, and that's what this is. We meet the second Wednesday of every month right at this time slot. So who are these people? Beth already introduced herself, so I'll talk about myself really quickly. Again, my name is Rainey Robison. My business name is Neptune Sugar. It's a marketing strategy agency specifically geared toward arts organizations. Now, with that said, my content and my consulting certainly is relevant to all types of museums, and I would love to talk with you about your marketing and your marketing challenges if you would like, and we'll put up our contact information at the end as well. Okay, so before we get started, Beth and I also decided we're going to have icebreakers. We're going to almost treat this like a first date and ask a question about about you that's completely off topic. What was that?
I said a first date. Oh, this is so great. And I love
some second dates. We want to know more about you. So last time we asked what your favorite ice cream is. We got some great answers. So I would love to hear just what your favorite movie is. And I mean your favorite movie of all time. So if you guys can put in the chat, we would love to just get a few icebreaker answers. And I'll put mine in there. Are you seeing the...
I'm just like chatting with all my friends over here. Yeah, fantastic. I see so many like people that I know. Oh my gosh.
I love it.
Rainey, I don't see your special movie. Oh, wait.
Oh no, the chat. Oh my gosh, The Gods Must Be Crazy. I used to watch that as a kid all the time.
Right? Rainey, make sure that you're chatting to everyone and not just to like.
There's mine.
Oh, there you are. Oh,
there we go.
Oh, so good.
Love it.
Yes.
I just wonder if somebody could put something just like really
Fargo. Oh my gosh, Neil, for real. When I watch, okay, so I'm originally from Central Wisconsin, and every time I watch Fargo, I was like, people always ask me if I'm from Fargo because of my accent. And that's not on the top of my list.
Right. Oh, these are great answers.
Oh, Royal Tenenbaums. Love it. Yes.
Somewhere in time. Royal Tenenbaums. I love it. Okay. Well, feel free to keep putting that in the chat, and we will keep going. So let's dive in. Let's talk about digital storytelling. So as promised, I'm going to be talking about this topic. Now, as we looked at the registration questions, we are realizing this is a really big topic. What did you say, Beth? It's an ocean of a topic.
Yes, Rainey and I were discussing it, and I said, okay, so what we're doing today is like we're dipping our toe in the hot tub of this topic, because there is an ocean of curiosity. The questions that we were asked in registration were so incredibly diverse that we had to really section it down and try to figure out like what tiny hot tub could we address here because there's so much, so much.
Yes, absolutely. A couple things that came up were, what about virtual exhibitions and what about audience engagement? And those are both things we're going to try to work into future workshops. But today what we're going to talk about, again, just skimming the surface, we're going to talk about why tell stories. We're going to talk a little bit about YouTube, still images, and reels. And my goal for you today, I'm basically just going to be showing you a bunch of different examples that I dug up from the internet. But my goal for you today is I'm hoping you just find some inspiration from these examples. And we'll talk about a couple formats that I think you can use to make to gain more engagement on your reels in particular. So what I would like to do, I have one more question for the chat before I dive in. What is digital storytelling? Do you even know what it is? So I kind of want to get a sense from you all and kind of read the room, you know, literally type red, yellow, or green. You know, red, I have no idea, Rainey. Yellow, I have a decent idea. Green, yeah, I'm pretty much an expert, but let's kind of just read the room in terms of if you understand what that is. Red, okay, I love it. That's why you're here. Lots of yellows, this is good. Orange.
I like yellow-ish,
Yeah,
green-ish, yes.
I love it. Okay, no, this is really helpful, and I think this is kind of where we will be in terms of the content that we talk about in just a minute. So also, you know, if you don't know what it is, digital storytelling is essentially storytelling as we know it. We've been telling stories. Got to turn off my AI there. Sorry about that. We've been telling stories since the beginning of time, but now we're in this multimedia era where we're mixing it with text, images, and videos and making little teeny tiny stories. So again, I'll show you some of those examples on social media. So why tell stories? Well, guess what? If you can get an emotional response from your audience, the memorability can be up to 20 times more than just kind of throwing something out there. So again, I'm going to show you some examples that make us laugh, that make us, you know, maybe a little, you know, maybe not cry, but, you know, get a little lump in your throat. But again, if you can connect with your audience on that level, it literally can trigger hormonal responses and therefore, again, make the content more memorable. Okay, so let's talk about YouTube. So I picked just two examples because, again, we only have so much time. But this one I thought was such a creative way to expose the public to contemporary art. So the Hammer Museum in LA brought in Will Ferrell and Joe McHale to come just kind of respond to their newest exhibition. This was probably 6 or 7 years ago, but the beautiful thing was that it got a lot of attention. I mean, obviously it has superstars in there, but it was shared a lot, and that's how I came across it. It was shared a lot in art circles. So again, I'll just show you a quick sliver of this clip, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it.
This is a work by Jason Dodge, and they're works where pillows that have only been slept on by acrobats.
Yeah, this is really good. And just like hanging around circuses and said, would you mind
Sleeping on
this purple pillow?
Yeah.
Sure, some said, no way.
No way, weirdo.
That sounds crazy to me. And others were like,
Yeah.
I don't care. We discussed it and I thought, okay, all right. I'm warming up to it, but ultimately, no.
How long was install for this one?
This one, similarly, it was about a day.
Day.
Yeah. This is a piece by Caspar Boseman.
And then they're laid on the ground in a certain
It was more
way or haphazard.
Some of the pieces seem to be randomly placed, actually took hours, if not days, to set up in a specific way. So that is another interesting discussion as to whether that is time well spent or not.
So I'll just stop it there. I'm just going to have to be able to show you snippets, but if you can check out this entire video, it is really hilarious. But what I love about it is it's sort of the Hammer Museum poking fun at itself and also creating sort of an entry point for the public to start to understand contemporary art and kind of maybe become even curious about it. Also, I want to recognize, I know not everyone has access to Hollywood megastars, but I think, and I certainly wouldn't, say go copy this, but at the same time, there could be people that you bring into your museum, a newscaster, comedian, or something that comes in and talks about your exhibition, or it could be as simple as a curator, just talking about the exhibition. I found a lot of that content as well. But again, I like the very humorous approach. And again, because it's hitting your funny bone, it makes it a lot more memorable. So I have one other YouTube example, and this is by the Tenement Museum in New York City, which is focused all around the stories of immigration. And I love this one because they're actually asking children to tell their stories of immigration. And I'll kind of let it speak for itself. I'll show you about a minute or so.
Any of you guys have parents that are immigrants? Okay, let's hear where your parents are from.
Lebanon and Moldova.
Okay, great. All of us, we have our own cultural identity.
The Your Story, Our Stories program is new to the museum, and what we're trying to do with this program is introduce students to immigration of the past and have them, through their own stories, connect to the present.
When we went to the Tenement Museum, it was not just showing the apartments to us, it's telling the story behind each of the objects.
What we want students to understand is that their own time, their own lives are part of the unending narrative. Each individual story makes us the people we are.
When the educator goes and visits them in their school, they review some of the objects they saw, and they get the idea that objects tell personal stories. Then the educator transitions to ask, do you have any objects in your home that tell an immigrant story?
I actually mean.
And I'll stop it there. But again, if you want to look at this, it's, we could even send you the links. Why don't we send the links to some of these videos as well? But again, I think it's so beautiful to be telling these stories through the eyes of these children. And the video was about 8 years ago. And they are still doing this project. If you have an immigrant story, you can upload a picture of an object and talk about your story behind there. And I just think it's such an amazing interactive experience. And I've seen some other museums do this as well. Even through COVID, they were asked, some museums were asking people to upload their stories about what they were experiencing at that time. So that's what I have for YouTube. I did want to say too, one thing about YouTube and these productions that I'm showing you, they're very, there's a very high production value. And again, the first one has Hollywood stars. So this would be a pretty expensive route to go. When we get to Reels, these are all going to be very easy handheld videos with minimal editing. So I think that those will be things that will be a much more accessible and easier to pull off. So I want to talk about still images for a minute too. I am a photographer, so I have a lot of opinions about this, but you have probably heard the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I don't always believe that. Like for instance, here is a cat and a mug. It's not really telling me much of a story other than this cat looking a little bit alarmed, Same thing here, just very singular image. It's a dog and a pillow. When it becomes a story is when the dog eats that pillow and there's this sort of residue and this story that has happened. Again, it's not a video, it's a singular image, but it's, within that image, you can tell that something happened and there's an interaction between one or more objects. So this was a recent IKEA campaign that I saw going around on social media. And I think it's pretty fantastic. It's humorous, it's, and it's kind of reminding you how, affordable IKEA is, but it's also, of course, using animals and is adorable for that. But I thought these were great examples about how just still images can tell stories. So here's a couple quizzes for you. So I went to the MoMA, Museum of Modern Art's Instagram page, and I was just kind of looking for like which things that they had on there that had the most engagement. So this is a quiz for you all. So on the left, we've got this beautiful, colorful, painting of a mermaid. And on the right, you've got a rainbow person in front of a rainbow painting. Which one, just based on the imagery, each one would have had some text next to it, but based on the imagery, which one do you think would have gotten the most engagement? Mermaid or rainbow? Just type in the chat. Rainbow. And why? And why? And you are correct. The rainbow got twice as much interaction on the still images. Now, what I want to point out though is that the one on the left is not to be ignored, though it's still got a lot of engagement. And, you know, you don't have to hit a home run every time. You know, you can fill in with just showing off your collections and your exhibitions and things like that. So again, in fact, I think they tied it to Pisces season or something in the text. Here's one, and then we'll do one more quiz from the MoMA, also from the MoMA. So on the left, and I will give you a backstory because there was text. On the left, we've got an older couple who met at the MoMA, and that's maybe their 54th anniversary or something like that. And on the right, we've obviously gotten a proposal, an engagement. Which do you think got the most likes? Anniversary or engagement? Those are good answers. Okay. It's a trick question. They both got a ton of engagement. However, you are right. The one on the right, I think the one on the right tells a story without having to rely on that text. Again, we recognize what that is. And the other thing is they're both emotionally connecting with us. We love love stories. We love anniversaries. We love proposals and weddings and things that touch our heart. The last thing I want to point out about these two is all of these, except for the mermaid image, are all user-generated content. People are taking images of themselves at the MoMA and posting them, and then the MoMA is sharing them. So they encouraged their viewers quite a bit to share images of what they're, you know, the different things. And you'll start to see people actually going to the MoMA dressed up as the painting so they can get a selfie in front of that. Now, once again, I wouldn't say go copy that, you know, that would certainly be kind of a rip-off, you know, concept, but there's probably some ways that you could get the public to interact with your exhibitions and prompt them to do that. So I want to show you one more example and then we'll move on to Reels. So the LACMA in LA prompted their viewers to post pictures of their dogs in the outdoor space. And again, they're just like little stories. They're adorable, you know, dog posing near these lanterns that are outside in the exterior. I believe they might be across the street from the LACMA. And it was incredibly successful. It's been going on for quite some time. And it literally has gone viral. So again, I think that if you really reflect on, you know, what are ways that our viewers, or not our viewers, our visitors can interact with our space, you can come up with some pretty cool ideas. And again, get your audience to do a little bit of the work as well. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is Reels. Reels are so fun and kind of addictive, frankly. But we'll talk about a few different platforms, but I'm going to show you a few different examples, but also kind of a format that I would suggest. Now, the first one has nothing to do with museums, but I have been noticing certain patterns of Reels and started to really analyze, like, why do I think this one did better than this one? And then I also follow a lot of people who basically that's what their entire channel is dedicated to, is looking at Reels and telling you why they work. And so I've been kind of looking for examples, and I landed on this one just the other day, and it got 40 million views on Instagram. So I'm going to show it to you twice, and then I'm going to ask you in the chat to say why you think it was successful, or what about it do you think is working. So here we go. 2, 1, go! Okay, so one more time. 2, 1, go! Okay, are you having an emotional response to this? Any type of emotion? Laughter, excitement, anything? Let's see what the chat is saying. The anticipation, yes, it makes you laugh. The anticipation, and it worked. It definitely worked. In fact, I found this and I think it had 20 million views, and then I went back to find it and it had doubled by the time I went back. So yes, Exactly. The cord back and, oh, that's funny. Okay, so this is the formula that I would recommend. And the museum examples that I'm gonna show you, they don't always hit all of these points, but usually they've got about 2 out of 3. And they're ones that I found had, somewhat higher engagement. So first you're going to start with a hook. So let me go back really quickly. So basically this text is saying, we're going to attempt this thing. And then also you're looking at, whoa, what's going on here? So there's something hooking you. You literally have like 2 seconds to, and maybe even less than that, to grab people's attention. Then there's this sort of build, this promise of a payoff, like, oh my gosh, are they going to be able to do this? And then they do. So I thought this was just a really fantastic example. So, and this graphic will be on your worksheet that we'll put in the chat later. So here are some examples that, again, I think have 2 out of 3. And then again, I'll maybe ask you in the chat what you think is actually happening here. So this one is about a free family event that they hold. So we'll watch this.
Are you ready?
Okay, did it have a hook? Did it have a promise of a payoff? And did it end on a high? Any thoughts? So I think that they probably could have ended around here. Again, this is just my opinion, but I do think they had kind of a hook. There was just something really cool, like, are you ready? It goes through all the stuff. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. I got to take my kids here. I think they probably could have ended on like a close-up of a kid, like, yeah, or something, and maybe build that up a little bit more. But again, this got a ton of engagement. It's a really good example of, yeah, exactly. It didn't have exactly a high. And this is the same case with this one. So this is, I know we have a lot of children's museum people out there. So this is an example of the Houston Children's Museum. It got a decent amount of attention, it looked like, but I thought it was kind of a good example of this as well. So let's watch this. And again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to show the whole thing. So what do you think? Did it have a hook? Did it grow? Was the music promoting any emotion or triggering any emotion in you? It started to dwindle. Yeah, I think that, again, they could probably have ended. And if any Children's Museum of Houston people are out there, we love you. And this is why I'm showing this. But yeah, I think, again, just like the last one, they could have sort of built up maybe and just had this kid close up like, yeah, this was the greatest thing. But at the same time, I want to know what this is. I want to get my kids there as soon as possible to have them participate in something like this. So I think overall, it's an exciting video. And again, it has that kind of powerful movie music that, is kind of a nice emotional response to it. So I have just a couple more. This one was just something I saw on LinkedIn on a few months ago and saved. I don't honestly know how much engagement this one got, but I wanted to throw this in here because I think this never gets old. Having kids respond or react to either artwork or exhibits or history exhibits, you name it. I think kids are hilarious. Now, I probably wouldn't do this every day, but, work it into your quarterly schedule because, again, so this is basically just kids reacting to the artwork in the Whitney. So I'll show a portion of this.
I'm excited to look at some art and talk about some art.
It looks inspiring, but also confusing. This is so cool. I see happiness. I see peace.
I see a name.
I see peaches.
Deterioration over time.
Darkness. Evil forces.
darkness and evil forces. I love it. And I really want to point out too, I mean, this is the Whitney, who I'm assuming has a pretty, you know, decent marketing budget. This is just handheld. This is just something somebody put together on their iPhone. And it's still, I think, a great way to show what's happening. I think sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves to have these really high-end productions. In fact, I was just reading a book called Hook Points by a social media expert, and he said sometimes we actually prefer this because if it's too polished, we think it's an advertisement. So sometimes kind of bringing it down to, you know, everybody's level, I think can be actually a really good idea. So I've got just a couple more for you, and then we will move, we'll take an intermission, and we'll introduce the next one and then take an intermission. But again, I hope this kind of just starts to pique your interest and make you think through, you know, some ways you could approach your own stories, whether they're longer stories or these small little reels. I found so much inspiration at the Getty. In fact, I had to remove slides. I found so much inspiration. So you might check them out. But one thing I wanted to point out, especially considering who's out there and with us today, is that they have a ton of educational content. It's just them talking about different concepts, whether it's an art material, an art method, a 100-year-old camera, any sort of nuanced topic that they can find to talk about it, they basically talk about it. So I'll show a quick clip of this.
What is chiaroscuro? Thanks to our viewers who suggested the term, I asked around Getty and found out. Chiaro is Italian for clear and bright, and oscuro is Italian for dark and obscure. So chiaroscuro literally means light dark, and is a technique where artists use strong contrasts of light and dark to create a sense of 3 dimensions, and more importantly, to create drama.
So check them out if you want to just kind of get a sense of what they're doing. And again, I think we can find a lot of inspiration, you know, from other museums. I mean, just like you learn to draw from the masters, you know, you go copy artworks in a museum, and then eventually it becomes your own and you create your own technique and your own ideas. So I think that, you know, they were certainly someone that you might look at. So 2 more reels I have. This one got 7.9 million views, so much more. Like they do a pretty good job. I was looking through their Instagram, and they've got some pretty great reels, but this one just like blew it through the roof. And I actually want to know from you after you watch it, why you think it worked. Oh, and also this is Beth's area of expertise, but she said that this slide is only there in the winter. I did not know that. So here we go.
Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
It's very short, but got a ton of views. So what do you think? Why did people stay on this reel instead of just continuing to scroll? Nostalgic. Yes, exactly. I think that we connect with it because it's a story we know as well, and we think it's funny. And then and it's so short, but I think that it has that hook. It has this like, what's happening? Oh, I recognize this. Oh, and this is funny. You know, so I think to some extent it really does follow that formula. Okay, so I have one more example for you. This again has nothing to do with museums, but this is our review. So this is a little bit longer video. But I don't know if you're familiar with the Savannah Bananas, but it's a baseball team that is pretty hilarious, and they do some pretty hilarious things. And it's funny because I just read another marketing book, and they had a whole chapter dedicated to the Savannah Bananas, which was really interesting. They were one of the few baseball teams to actually make money during COVID. But at any rate, they have baby races between innings. So see if you can see this formula happen in this in this video. All right, so really quickly, do you guys see the parts? And I love that they put, this is the most exhilarating baby race that's ever taken place. So again, hook. Oh, I gotta see this. And then again, it builds, and I'm sure not all of their baby races are this, competitive or, surprising, but I think that that's a pretty great one. So again, we just skimmed the surface. That's all we really have time to cover today. But again, I hope that there's just at least a few nuggets that you can take from today and think through, especially how you make your reels and think through your photographs. And again, we have takeaways. We have two sort of brainstorming guides. One is a little bit more just general brainstorming about how you can think about your stories and go through your museum in a day and kind of look for different stories. And the next one is a real deep dive. Like you might sit down in a staff meeting or something and really try to suss out a bunch of different approaches to telling your stories. So I hope you find these helpful. Can you put those in the chat, Beth? So she'll put links to, they're basically in Google Documents, and you'll just make a copy or download it, and you can literally fill in the rectangles in there. So it's an interactive worksheet that you can fill in your own information. The last thing we want to talk about before we take a quick break is next week, we're really excited to have a special guest. So last time Beth spoke, this time I spoke, and next time we will be interviewing Lara Dowdy. So Beth, I'm going to have you introduce her and how we ended up inviting her to Museum Minds.
Sure. Lara is on the call today, so she might even be able to say hey, but I always love it when people introduce me because I always am like, oh, I wish I knew that person. So we met Lara just through the network and through creative folks, arts folks, all this stuff. And each time we got on a call with her, we saw this running theme about how she continued to talk about how she worked in pretty high levels of the art organizations and was able to really bring her teams together to do some pretty amazing things. So Lara's going to get on with us next month, and we're going to do it interview style. We've got some ideas of questions. We're going to take your questions, and I'm going to pick Lara's brain about diverse teams. So Lara, anything else to add? Since you're here, a quickie?
I'm just excited to do this. Rainey, this was amazing. I love this format. So yeah, I hope our next one is as exciting as this one is.
Oh, it will be.
And you can tell right there, Lara's energy is very much like ours. So we're excited for that. Right there's a QR code to register, but also just like last time, we're absolutely going to send you an email tomorrow. The email is going to have the brainstorming guide. Since you're here, you also get the deep dive document, and it will have registration information for May 8th. So grab your spot for that one, and I'll send it to you tomorrow.
And then last thing is, it is intermission time. So we'll take 2 or 3 minutes just so we can get up and stretch. But in the meantime, here are literally barcodes, I keep calling them barcodes, and Beth gets mad at me, QR codes of, if we both do free discovery calls, if you're interested in our services, we will also, you need to put that in the chat right now. But Beth's going to put our LinkedIn, our emails, and our Calendly links in the chat if you're interested in talking with us more. And if you're not, we hope that you keep coming to Museum Minds. So we would love to hear from you though. So let's take a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. Is that what we did last time?
A couple minutes to get a drink of water, tell a couple jokes.
If you gotta go, you have to go, but we hope you'll stick around for our Q&A. We had so many questions, we can't even get to all of them, but I think it will be a really engaging discussion, and kind of these questions really help us get a sense of what you want to hear about, and we'll take those into account as we plan the next year's worth of content, really. So, all right, well, we'll see you guys in just a sec.
Gives everybody a second to go and get a drink of water, right? I see that there are some people leaving, but I'm telling you, when you stick around, you get the networking side of things. So good. Also, while you all have a second, I put the registration link for Laura's talk next month in the chat. Also, if you're interested in connecting with any of the people that are on this call today, go ahead and put your LinkedIn link in the chat as well, because we don't necessarily want you putting it in during the talk and getting distracted, but it is intermission. So go ahead and pop yours in there. I'll pop mine in there too. Thank you, Cynthia. Michael, I saw yours at the top of the meeting. Thank you for doing that in the beginning as well. It's awesome. Good, good, good. Also, friendly reminder, we're going to send you a copy of the chat as well. So even if you don't get through all of these right now, you can absolutely get them when we send you the chat. Good, good, good. Alrighty. Rainey, are you fully hydrated? Are you feeling good? Are we ready to pop into some networking Q&A? All kinds of
I am back. Yeah. And so let me stop share and make sure I have the questions up. And Beth and I also, some of these questions, we want to answer them, but we also are curious what your take on some of these questions are. So bear with me 2 seconds while I shift over to questions from screen share.
While she's switching, does anybody have burning questions they want to ask
Oh,
right
yeah.
now?
Let's
Go
see
ahead
what
and
you
take
guys have
yourself.
live.
Oh, Cynthia has her hand up. I love it. Take yourself
it.
off mute and just go ahead and ask us.
Hi, I couldn't find the hand raise button on here. Yeah, so I have a question. So we do a ton of work with emerging museums or really small museums where bandwidth is always an issue. And so with all of the changing algorithms and you know, everything that comes with social media, do you have a recommendation for like one, if you're going to focus all of your time, if it's Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is there one that you should be focusing on a little bit more to optimize?
I do actually, that was the first question we were going to answer essentially. But I'm kind of curious just to read from the chat, what platforms are you on? What do you think is the most important if you were to pick one or even two? Where people are saying, no, this is why I'm here. I want,
Yeah,
I
this
want
is why
to
they're
hear
here.
from you.
And I'm not a marketing person, so I don't feel like
Yeah.
I'm qualified to answer this one, but I have to say, as a consumer, I'm all about Instagram. I really don't use Facebook that much. But I also know that when I was in a brick and mortar museum, Facebook was our primary audience getter. So, but also my kids are all on TikTok, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. What's your answer, Rainey?
I think as all marketing answers will begin, it depends. It depends on who you're talking to, of course. You know, it depends on your demographics. I will say that, you know, and it's funny too, because a lot of people are like, oh, Facebook's dead. No, Facebook is king. It has 3 billion users. More than a third of the world population is on Facebook. And even a director of a museum I talked to here locally, she said, I know my audience. I know they use Facebook. I know, she just knows it. And it also has a very steady, how do I say this? Like it does run a little bit older, but still even in the younger and even older audiences, it still has a really good, you know, really good numbers in terms of usage. Instagram runs a little bit younger, and both of them are slightly geared a little bit more toward women, but I would say you probably could repeat or kind of do similar content on both. So my biggest recommendation is Facebook and Instagram, just to kind of cover those both those bases. Now, if you really want a younger audience, yeah, you're gonna hop on TikTok, probably. YouTube has, it also has a lot of users up there like Facebook, but again, you have to kind of ask yourself, do I have the time and manpower to do this longer form content? And I don't think a lot of people do. So I think between Facebook and Instagram, you're pretty well covered. I would not throw the widest net you possibly can, you know, and try to get on LinkedIn and all the other threads and, you know, things that aren't even really established yet. I would go with the two really established Meta social media networks. And then LinkedIn too, it's a lot more business to business. I mean, some of the bigger museums, you'll see them start to try out Twitter and some of the other ones. But again, really, I think if you can master those two, you're going to be in a really good space. So I hope that's helpful. It's a very long-winded answer, but I hope it's helpful.
It's making me think of more questions that would take us down a
Oh no,
rabbit hole.
Do you want to throw it out there or should we keep going?
My other question is, so when you said something like the Facebook and Instagram that are both owned by Meta, what if something happened to Meta? Like, is it in your mindset, is it important to also then be building your mailing list at the same time? I know it's completely off the topic. You can give me a quick yes or no, a very, very quick answer. But as soon as you said both owned by Meta, I thought to myself, well, what happens if they go away?
Well, I think that things are always morphing. Like social media, I describe it as this big monster that's ever changing. And look what happened to Twitter, you know, I mean, it's still relevant, but it's, you know, less relevant than it used to be, you know, but I don't necessarily imagine that it's just going to crash and burn one day. I think you'll start to get a sense of, okay, well, maybe I'll start moving over here instead, you know, but like Threads, for instance, I would go get your username, go get it. But I wouldn't necessarily spread yourself too thin and invest in a brand new, you know, unestablished, you know, social networks. So, so anyway, again, I hope that's helpful. And, you know, if you want to talk more about it, sign up for a discovery call and we can talk about that as well.
I love Bud's comment. If something happened to Meta, the world might quit spinning.
Yeah.
We would be in the midst of another solar eclipse.
Yeah. But Instagram has 2 billion users, you know, like it's right on the tails of Facebook. So I think you're covered pretty well on those two. Okay. So the next question is it possible to share too much on social media, meaning about your exhibits? And I'm curious what you guys think too. Like, do you feel like hounded by certain organizations, or again, I can just answer it too, but I'm always curious
Come
what
off
you guys
of mute too, if you want to give a little bit of feedback. I know Michelle might have some input on this because not only does their museum have their own page, but she specifically for her department has a whole nother page. Michelle, you want to give us a little feedback on like why you chose to do that?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Michelle Wright with the Minnesota Children's Museum. I manage our traveling exhibits, which is actually more of business to business kind of marketing that we need to do for that. And so we had an Instagram page, but it wasn't really, it was kind of like hitting the marketing staff of the museums that we followed and not really like the decision makers about exhibits. So we kind of shifted over to LinkedIn for that. And I just have found so much more engagement in that platform for our particular use. But yeah, I mean, I guess that parlays into one of my questions is like, how much should you be posting? Because you don't want to be posting too much, but you don't want folks to forget about you. We're kind of pacing at trying to post something about once a week. It's not like, you know, that isn't a set in stone schedule, but that's kind of what we aim for. And that feels about right for us. But I don't know if there's like a standard.
And that too, like, just to pop in there. Thank you so much, Michelle, for your contribution. I really appreciate it. And I love Sean the sheep is sitting behind you.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm not actually in the exhibit, but I love this wallpaper.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a really good point to bring up. and Rainey, you can expound on this a little bit in regards to target audience, frequency, algorithms. What's your take?
I'm glad you brought up the word frequency, because that is a term that, you know, we've been using since the newspaper days. So for instance, back when we used to post newspaper ads, we would never just post one, ever. So sometimes people need to be hit 3 to 5 times, honestly, before they're actually going to act. I've even noticed it with myself. Like I'll see something and I'll scroll past it, see it again. And then finally, like the third time I see it, I go, oh, this must be important, you know? So again, unfortunately, marketing is not an exact science. There's a lot of testing that has to be done. I would probably be posting more than once a week, maybe
I was going to say
3
too.
to 5. And you don't have to just keep posting about the same thing over and over again. You can find all this kind of fill-in content, you know, between events and things like that. You know, you could just talk about, you know, we have this new exhibit, or even just pick something like with the Getty, you know, a certain concept that you feel like you want to talk about. I think you do have to stay in people's minds. But again, if you have an event, one thing that I'm seeing is people just kind of throw it out there, post it on Instagram once, and then they kind of wonder, why didn't anybody show? The other issue, I think, is that, for instance, I follow 1,000 people on Instagram. So unless you're continuing to engage with a certain audience, you're probably just going to get lost in the background too. So that's a consideration, but I would be posting more than once a week, you know, but again, I think you have to balance it with like your capacity, you know, what you're able to put out there. One thing I also saw in the chat, I wanted to shout out to Chad. I actually he says, I found that sometimes folks like behind the scenes type of content, and I completely agree. In fact, that was something I had to take out of my presentation to make it more timely. There's a lot of that as well. And then even the Getty, they would, you know, they do just like, oh, there's a beautiful sunset, you know, I'm going to go film that and kind of remind people that we're here. Or the one you mentioned in your email, Beth, it's raining outside, you know, and I'm just going to go take a handheld video of it. So I think there are other ways that you can communicate with them as well, and just kind of remain fresh in their mind without bothering them. Do you know what I mean? And continuing to, you know, even Beth and I talk a lot about this too, in terms of how much should we communicate with you? And there's some email lists that I'm signed up with. I get 3 a day, you know, and that again that starts to be like, no, I'm unsubscribing. Like I'm actually irritated at this point. So again, I think you have to kind of find your own balance and see, you know, if you're posting too much and then things start to have no engagement, then that might be an indicator that maybe you're posting too much. But yeah, I definitely would probably do more than once a week.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. And I think, like, again, we talk a lot about this, and I know in our circles, even in just like business circles, museum circles, entrepreneurial circles, like we're all having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about 70% of us are overthinking
it.
Right? Like
I agree.
sometimes we just have to get out there and do it. Like there was a lot of examples that Rainey showed that were very powerful and super cool. And like, I saw so many like smiling faces on your videos, or like giggles and laughs and things like that. And if that's like a quick little video that takes 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you know, even last week I posted a video that was like, rock stacking at my local botanical gardens. It was less than 10 seconds and it got way more interaction than a static thing. I was literally there like with a friend going for a walk, and I said, oh, that's so cool. Hang on a second. Beep. Done, walked away. But then I was able to post it. Or even like, you know, we've been pretty thoughtful about how often, but then also the like, let's post about something that's related and then mention the meetup at the end. So we are even talking about like the difference between an organic post and a direct post. Like when you're going to see stuff from us that has that graphic that says, museum minds, digital storytelling, diverse teams, whatever it is. But then the other parts of the week, you're going to see stuff from us that are like, oh, hey, by the way, look at this really cool picture or whatever. P.S. We're talking more about this over here. So it's not like they feel like they're being inundated, or maybe you can tell us otherwise. Maybe you are feeling inundated from us, but we're trying to walk the walk a little bit there in doing those types of things. I see people giggling. I need to read.
I was like this. That was hilarious, Chad. I love it. So you clearly had a lot of engagement there.
That is really funny, right? But way to make people laugh. That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, it can be all sorts of emotions. I know we're running out of time. Do you want to throw a big question out there, or is there any sort of wrap up?
Does anybody else have something burning on their mind?
Tell us what you want to hear, but tell us what you want us to talk about in the future.
Right. And it doesn't have to be social media related.
Right.
It's just kind of like hey, I'm here and I'm really waiting for you to address something that is on the forefront of my mind. Well done, Chad. Well done.
Yeah, I don't have, it's not like a big question, but like a follow-up to the other thing I was talking about. So, I currently work with an intern that does our content, and she works like 10 hours a week. And so we are kind of limited on the content creation for our social media. So if there's any kind of solutions for that, like, do you just break it down? I don't know. Do more teasers instead of posting one whole big thing, or how would you attack that?
I have a suggestion on that one. You need to use AI. Like, as much as we're all kind of like AI is controversial, I use AI a lot for idea generation. So like, go to ChatGPT or I love Claude.ai. He's my new boyfriend. And I type in things like, I would like to make a social media calendar for the next 60, 90, 120 days, posting 5 days a week in regards to traveling exhibit content, learning through play, how parents can become engaged with their children in children's museum settings, blah, 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 blah. Give me 60 ideas of things to post about. You will have 60 ideas in the matter of like a minute.
Exactly.
And then you just kind of sort through it and you say like, do I really want to post about that? No. Do I want to post about that? No. That's kind of dumb. Nah. Or say like, what are the top 30 trending topics right now? That was one of them that I just saw. And even like Rainey put up the dogs and cats, like dogs and cats are always trending, Yeah. And I think too that I just got an email from somebody saying like, just look up the trending topics and then like jump on it. Like if something is trending, you can go out there and just like put a song on there, or, what I mean? It could be lots of different things. Do you agree, Rainey, or am I like?
No, I do agree, but then I think you go into testing phase, and then you have to start to actually just throw it out there and see, okay, well that worked. And if it didn't work, you pivot. So it's a tricky thing, but I think it's also something that people overthink as well, because ultimately the algorithm is just it will reward consistency. And if there's a way you can get people to stop and stay on your content, then it will start to reward you for that and boost the algorithm. Again, the rest of it is like, if I knew how the algorithm worked, I'd be a bazillionaire, but those are things that I do know about how it works. So, but I love your idea about using AI too, because you can also ask it very specific questions. Like, give me some examples of children's museums and some of the posts that they've made that have received a ton of engagements. Or, how have they done their storytelling or something? It will give you specific examples, like this children's museum in Boston did this, and it was, this went viral, and it's almost amazing what it can can gather for you. And again, it just starts to get those juices flowing, I think, because again, I think a lot of us, and this is an art metaphor, but we're staring at that blank canvas. Like, where do I begin? And again, I think if you can just start that brainstorming process and use these worksheets that we put in the chat, make a copy of those, and those might help you start to think through some ideas as well.
And one
So
last thing,
that's helpful. Yeah.
in an effort to not overthink it, Rainey told me that my post should be 500 characters or less. Like 500 characters is not a lot when you look at it, but also knowing that people don't want to dive too deep into things, your post could be 3 sentences with a 10-second video. It doesn't matter what the person is doing. They just need that dwell time. And you have to consistently be posting in an effort for the algorithm to put your content up there for people to see. Michelle, you have a million different types of content for behind the scenes that could be a 10-second video. I can see that 100%. 100%.
Right behind you.
Right?
I just need like the person here to do that.
Yeah. And I think that's why I really tried to emphasize those last ones. They're all handheld, and you can hire sometimes people on Fiverr just to video edit, and it's pretty inexpensive. But
what about having your audience do it?
Yeah.
Like have a
Or
day
use the
where
generative,
Liz stands down there at the front desk, and whenever she sees a parent taking a video of their kid, she says, "Hey, do you mind tagging us in that? Do you mind?" You know what I mean? Like 3 days out of the week, you could just be doing reshares of things that other people are posting on social media, but that's bringing you consistency. And they are then going to tag themselves in your posts, and all of their friends are going to be like, I want my kid to be on the Minnesota Children's Instagram page. And then they're going to put their content up. You might walk into the office and Liz is going to have an inbox full of content and not have to record one thing.
I think it's pretty niche, but for me, it would be more like the venues we work with, like Golisano, taking photos of, people enjoying the exhibit on the road. But
reach out to your people.
Yeah.
All right. Whew. We've had so much fun today. This is so good. People are slowly falling off, which is totally fine. And we don't want to block up too much of your day. Sign up for next month. Make sure you come. We'll send you an email reminder, of course. And Rainey, thank you so much today for your amazing knowledge. It was so good. I completely enjoyed it.
Thank you.
So good. All right, friends, we will see you next month and maybe a little bit in between as well.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.